Hi, I'm Matt from Leicester Libraries Neighbourhood Services, and today I'm going to tell you a story from Ireland. Ireland, a beautiful green land, the Emerald Isle, the land of magic and fairies and leprechauns. Now, I need you to join in with me today, and to do that, you're going to need some tools. First off, we're going to be chopping some wood. Who knows what you need to chop wood? That's right, an axe. This is my axe. I've got it ready. Get your axes ready. And first of all, we're going to test the edge to make sure it's sharp with our thumb, like this. Oh, yes, sharp. And then we're going to chop that wood. Let me hear those axes. And again with me, chop. Right, and then you're going to need a saw. And we're going to take our saw and we're going to... Come on then. And last of all, we're going to need a fishing rod and a reel. And we're going to make a nice long cast. Whoosh, plop. And then we're going to slowly wind it in. And oh, what's this we've caught? Is it a fish? No, it's just an old boot. Anyway, are you ready for the story? It's called The Fisherman of Lough Neagh. And don't forget to join in when the time comes. Once, there was a poor fisherman. Seamus was his name, and he lived on the shores of Lough Neagh in County Antrim in the north of Ireland. Now, Lough Neagh is a huge lake. It's so big, in fact, that it's like the sea. And when that cold north wind blows in the winter, the waves on the loch get so rough, you can't go out in a little fishing boat. You just sink, and that'd be that. So, in the dead of winter, Seamus had to find a different way to earn some money to buy food to feed his family. And what he would do is he would take his axe and he would go out and chop wood to sell at the market to buy food for his family. But this winter, it had been hard and long and colder than usual. And Seamus was not the only person who needed to chop wood to make a little extra money. And there was barely any wood left to cut. One morning early, he was walking along the shores of Lough Neagh with his axe over his shoulder and his breath coming out in huge white clouds. You know how it does when it's very, very cold. And he was looking for some wood to chop. And he saw, hanging out over the loch, a thick tree branch. And he thought, that branch, that will be perfect. And he climbed and he clambered up the tree and he took his axe and he began, are you ready? To chop at that branch. But his fingers were so cold in the icy air that the axe slipped from his hand and plop, splash, down it went into the deep, dark water of the loch. Oh, no, whatever will I do, said Seamus. Oh, the loch's so deep and so dark. I can never get my axe back, and I have no money to buy another one, and I have no money to buy food for my family. Whatever am I going to do? And he put his head in his hands and he began to sob. Great big sobs. But all of a sudden, he heard a voice. What's wrong with you? Said the voice. And when he looked up, there, in a tiny boat, about as big as a shoe, there was a little fairy man with a fishing rod in his hand. I've lost my axe, said Seamus. It's fallen into the deep, dark waters of the loch, and I have no money to buy another one, and I have no money for food. Ah, said the fairy fisherman. Would you like me to try and find it for you? Oh, would you, said Seamus. Oh, that would be great. And without another word, the fairy fisherman took his fishing rod and he made a long cast. Whoosh, plop. And he began to slowly wind it in. And there, hanging from the hook, to Seamus's amazement, was an axe made of solid gold. "Is this your axe?" said the little fairy man. "Oh, I wish this was my axe," thought Seamus. "If that was my axe, all my troubles would be over. I could take it to the market and I could sell it to buy food for my family for this winter and all the winters afterwards." "No," he said, because he didn't want to tell a lie. "Just a minute," said the little fairy man. "I'll try again." And he took his fishing rod and he made a long cast. Whoosh, plop. And he slowly wound it in. And hanging from the hook, to Seamus's amazement, was an axe, this time made of solid silver. "Is this your axe?" said the fairy fisherman. "Oh," thought Seamus, "I wish that were my axe. If that were my axe, all my troubles would be over. I could take it to market and sell it to buy food for this winter and all the winters afterwards." "No," he said, because he still didn't want to tell a lie. "Just let me have one more try," said the fairy fisherman. And he took his fishing rod and he made another long cast. Whoosh, plop. And he slowly wound it in. And hanging from the hook was Seamus's old axe. "Is this your axe?" "Oh, thank you," said Seamus. "How can I ever repay you?" And tears of relief filled his eyes. And to his amazement, when the tears cleared and he could see again, there on the bank before him were 3 axes. His old axe, a silver axe, and a golden axe. "Ah, sure," said the fisherman. "An honest man like you deserves a reward, and there's always a little bit of fairy magic to help out the honest folk." And then, with the fisherman, the tiny boat, the fishing rod and reel disappeared into thin air. And Seamus took his axe, all 3, back to the village, and the very next day he went to market with the golden axe and the silver axe, and he sold them for lots and lots of money, a very good price indeed. But of course, the story spread, and everybody in the village had heard about Seamus and the fairy fisherman of Lough Neagh. Now, there was another man in the village. His name was Michael, and he was not such an honest man. In fact, he was quite sneaky, and he thought, how can I trick that fairy fisherman into giving me something made of gold and something made of silver and making me a rich man like Seamus? And he went and he talked to Seamus and he put his arm around him, and Seamus told him the whole story. And the next morning early, Michael went out. He took an old saw from his shed and he went down to that exact same spot, and he saw the tree branch hanging out over the loch, and he clambered and he climbed into the tree and he took his saw and he began to saw. And he looked around to see if he could see anybody. There was nobody there. And he began to saw. And suddenly he just threw his saw into the loch with a splash. And he climbed down from the tree and he put his head in his hands and he began to pretend to cry. "Boo-hoo-hoo! Boo-hoo-hoo-hoo!" he said. And he peeped around to see if anybody was looking. And suddenly he heard a voice. "What's the matter with you?" said the voice. "Oh, I've lost my saw. I've dropped it into the deep, dark waters of the loch, and I can't get it back, and I have no money to buy another one, and I have no money for food. And I suppose you want me to find it for you," said the little tiny fisherman. Yes, said Michael. And he didn't even say please. Well, the fairy fisherman took his fishing rod and he made a long cast. Whoosh, plop. And he began to slowly wind it in. And sure enough, hanging from the hook was a golden saw. Is this your saw? Said the fairy fisherman. Yes, said Michael. Yes, that is my saw. No, it's not, said the fisherman. You know as well as I that your saw was not made of solid gold. And with the fisherman, the tiny boat, the fishing rod and reel disappeared into thin air. And Michael never saw either of them again. Well, Seamus, he lived happily ever after, and he had enough money to buy food for his family for that winter and all the winters after that, and to buy big, thick logs of firewood for his fire. And Michael, well, he had to go out and buy himself a new saw. And to be honest, I think it served him right for being such a greedy guts. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you liked the story of the Fisherman of Lough Neagh, and if you did, tell all your friends and family. Bye.